In this video, we will be showing the process of repairing an Xbox Series X HDMI port replacement that was mailed in to us by a customer from Wisconsin. The customer told us that they took it to a local repair shop near them and that their shop attempted the repair but couldn't fix the issue. The HDMI port on most game consoles is already extremely fragile, and it's very common for new technicians or stores that don't have much experience soldering to completely rip the pads on the HDMI port during the replacement. As you can see, the previous repair attempt left the new HDMI port sitting crooked and had multiple damaged pads. The first step to fixing the Xbox Series X is going to be to remove the current HDMI port. So we will add some flux to the board. Flux aids in soldering and desoldering processes by removing oxide films which form on the surface of metals that are being soldered. Basically, flux makes our job a lot easier and safer for your game console. Next, we will turn over the Xbox motherboard so that the heat can be applied to the area around the HDMI port. During this process, our heat gun can get up to 500 degrees Celsius. Once the area is hot enough, we gently pull away the very hot HDMI port to remove it. This process looks very simple on camera but takes much practice to perfect in real time. As you can see on the old port, the person that attempted this repair ripped the pads and thought they could simply put back a new port. Because of the additional damage, we will have to lay jumpers from the missing pads to the pins of the new HDMI port. Rather than throwing away the damaged ports, we tend to recycle them. During our very minimal amount of free time, myself or other technicians make art out of the old e-waste. A great example of this art is our famous wall of shame made out of tons of broken screens and displays and other parts that we have replaced over the years. Before soldering in a new HDMI port, we need to use a bit of highly concentrated alcohol and a Q-tip to remove the old flux. Next, we remove the plastic seal that covers the customer's brand new HDMI port. Then we will heat from underneath the Xbox Series X motherboard. Once the solder is liquefied and gives us a very shiny reflection, that's our cue to slowly drop in the new HDMI port. Again, this process seems very straightforward while watching it sped up, but in real time it's extremely tedious and takes a lot of practice on donor boards to perfect. Holding a heat gun spitting out extremely hot air while holding the tiny port in the other hand, also while trying to prevent damage by knocking off other micro components, isn't as easy as it looks. Once the new port is installed, we use the tips of our pliers to apply just enough pressure to prevent the port from lifting or moving while we slowly back away with our heat to let the anchor points cool down. The new port sits perfectly and looks gorgeous. Now that the new HDMI port is successfully installed, we will begin using micro copper wire that is about 0.1 millimeters thin. This wire will be used to lay jumpers from the ripped copper traces to the new HDMI port pins. The copper used here is about the size of a human hair. You can barely identify an individual wire without a microscope. To lay a jumper, we must first gently scratch off the end of the trace to expose the copper underneath the green coating of the PCB. Next, we use the thin copper wire to jump from the broken trace to the pins on the new HDMI port. This process is extremely tedious, and one wrong move or too much heat will force you to start all over. Now that we have all of our jumpers laid and the new HDMI port is installed, it's important that we test each pin to ensure we are getting the correct readings. We also use a sharp knife to ensure that our jumpers have little to no movement after our repair. In some cases, we may use a curable UV coating to prevent the jumpers from touching. But on this particular device, our jumpers are spaced far enough apart to prevent us from having to use this additional coating. Our tech will now reassemble the Xbox, and then it's time to see if our tedious hard work has paid off for the customer. Now that the console is reassembled enough to fully test it, we can insert a known good HDMI cable and see if we get a display on our test monitor. We can click the power button on the console and Boom! The customer's Xbox Series X is back working again. Our team proved yet again that the unfixable is sometimes fixable. If you need your Xbox Series X, Series S, PlayStation 5, or other devices' HDMI port replaced, check us out at XiRepair.com. Our services include free shipping, free diagnostics, and a 1-year free warranty with all repairs. We receive hundreds of repair mail-in orders from across North America. Visit XiRepair.com today or click on the little link in the description to get a free instant quote right now.